What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. And today I want to talk about something a little bit different. I want to talk about how I feel about tag fighting games, or more specifically, versus fighting games. They're a staple of the fighting game space, and they are great ways to have really cool crossovers that bring together franchises that you otherwise wouldn't see. However, I have some problems with them that I would like to address, and I think there are games coming out soon, those specifically being the Invincible Versus game and the Marvel Tokon game that have addressed some of these issues for me. And I also think other games in the future, like a possible Marvel vs. Capcom 4, no, we don't count Infinite, would be wise to implement these ideas as well. The Marvel vs. Capcom games are some of the best fighting games of all time and are truly influential for the entire fighting game industry. Their gameplay and style is beloved by so many people, and most of the time when other people try to copy them and come out with a new versus game, most people just say, okay, how much of it is like Marvel vs. Capcom? However, with all of that being said, I don't really like them that much. My problem is the rosters that these games choose to go with. There are two main issues that arise when you have a blank versus blank fighting game. Things like Mortal Kombat versus DC, or Marvel versus Capcom, or like a Marvel versus DC fighting game. Things like that. This may not be the same problem for everyone, but it's one that I found that very much annoys me about the genre. The first problem that arises in a versus format for a roster is that you can only have so many characters from each franchise. The biggest example of this that I can give where this was a problem was in Mortal Kombat versus DC. The roster in that game was overall not bad. I'll give it some grace simply because it was the first of an HD console that had zero assets to pull from for other games. And there was DLC planned that had canceled four characters, two on each side. Those being Harley Quinn and Doomsday for DC, and Quan Chi and Kung Lao for the Mortal Kombat side. With the size of the roster, I feel like several well-known characters on both sides were left out. For Mortal Kombat, characters like Johnny Cage, Reptile, Melina, and Ermac were all glaring omissions from that game. I can't speak much to how popular characters were in 2009 for the DC side. I can definitely say that characters like Cyborg, Aquaman, Robin, and maybe even Bane all deserve to be in this game. There are many others that I can list, but again, I don't know what the landscape of popularity for DC was in 2009. The point is, in a game where you can only fit so many spots in the first place, splitting the number of characters you have total in the game in half doesn't usually lead to much variety on the roster. Probably one of the deepest cuts in this entire roster is Captain Marvel, or Shazam as we now call him. And that's really it. All the other characters that were chosen to be on this roster were mainstays in their respective franchises, and no one was surprised when they were put there. You can make a case for Catwoman, but that's a different story. That's the problem with versus fighting games to me. There's so many characters that you could pick from in any given franchise that when putting them up against another franchise seems like a disservice to one another when you don't put like 30 characters on each side. The older games like Marvel vs. Capcom 2 can get away with this as can get away with having as many characters as they did on those old rosters because they just took sprites from other games and worked them into their engine. Including all the hidden characters, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 has 56 characters in it. That means that there are 28 fighters from each franchise. I would say that this is a healthy amount of characters for a game like this, especially before the rise of the MCU and many other characters like the Guardians of the Galaxy not even being household names yet. That game even had a healthy mix of X-Men, Avengers, villains, and other things like that. However, as time goes on, development times for games have become longer. They become more expensive to develop. And because of that, the roster sizes frequently shrink. It's rare nowadays to have a mainline fighting game that has over 20 characters in the base roster. That means if a versus game were to come out today, you only have 10 characters from both sides, and that's not really faithful to the respective franchises. Versus games on their own have a problem with their rosters. However, it becomes, in my opinion, a much larger problem in tag fighters. In tag fighters, you have two, sometimes three characters that you can switch between during a match. Obviously, the Marvel vs. Capcom games are the most famous for this. However, I feel like for as big as the MVC2 and even MVC3 rosters were, it felt significantly smaller because of the need to pick 3 characters at a time. Well, I think the actual gameplay of a tag fighter and 3v3 versus fights adds a lot of complexity and fun opportunities for good gameplay. Sure, it's fun to pair up characters like Dante and Ghost Rider to fight on the same team, but I feel like you go through the number of characters that you use and learn and try out much quicker than if you're only using one. While the roster in Mortal Kombat vs. DC wasn't amazing, I feel I was actually able to learn each character and spend a lot of time on them with them and their character endings and things like that before moving on to the next one. In a tag fighter, you're constantly using 3 or so characters. It makes exploring them less interesting because you have to figure out if they work well together or if not. You have to spend time. You have to spend way more time on that than the character itself. If I want to play Deadpool in Marvel 3, I have to learn who he works well with and then how to use them well together. I understand that's not exactly like that, but I almost feel like I'm using the character based on what they can do rather than how much I actually like them. When you have a roster around 50, it sounds better than it really is because you have to pick 3 fighters per match. All I'm saying is that to me personally, the fighters are being devalued because you have to pick 3 at a time. Their playstyles, moves, and personalities are so different that it's hard to enjoy the character I'm actually playing as. However, games like Invincible Versus and Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls seem to be fixing these issues for me. For starters, on both sides, their rosters are one franchise. Because of this, they're not forced to split the roster in half or leave fan favorite characters out of the game. Both games, even in early access builds of these games, have characters that I would never have expected to be in a versus fighting game roster, but are now able to be in because they stuck to one franchise. Characters like Bulletproof and Thula are characters I never expected to be on the Invincible Versus roster just because of how many characters in the Invincible franchise have similar abilities of super strength and invulnerability. I expect several of the Viltrumites or characters that have similar powers to be left out because of how similar they are. In fact, I can almost guarantee you that neither of them would be on a roster if it had to be split with another franchise. All tag fighters naturally have larger rosters, but that doesn't always succeed in remedying the fact that they have multiple characters that you choose to fight in one match. It's been confirmed that Invincible Versus will start with 18 characters on the base roster and 4 for each DLC pack, which I think is fair enough in this day and age with how long it takes for games to be made and things like that. But again, 18 for a 3v3 tag fighter feels much better and much more earned with the roster that they create when it's one franchise rather than two. If this was Invincible versus The Boys, you would have 9 characters from both on the starting roster. Again, characters like Bulletproof as Thula would never make it on a roster of only 9 characters. Plus, the Marvel Fighting Souls game also helps the issue by only focusing on one franchise, but it even takes it a step further by how its gameplay is handled. The game is going to be the first 4v4 tag fighter that has ever existed, and while that at first worried me when they originally revealed it, since then, they have eased my nerves by the incredible things that they have told us. They have said in the game that all 4 characters are working on a singular life bar, and that the game is split into 3 rounds, best 2 out of 3, rather than each character having their own life bar. What that means is that if I want to purely stick to using Star-Lord and use the 3 other characters as assists throughout the entire game, I absolutely can do that. Because of this change, I can fully learn and enjoy one character, use them for as long as I want, and when I get bored of him, I can move on to the next person. This is different than an average 3v3 fighting game because I feel like I have to split my time equally between each of them to always get the best experience. While I'll still have to do this somewhat with my 3 assist characters, I don't have to do nearly as much homework when switching between 4 characters every time. This is a long-winded talk simply to say that versus tag fighters are not really my thing, but I am hopeful that games in the future can provide new ways to play the game that makes it more attuned to my taste in the fighting game space and others as well. I'm not saying that the choices that those fighting games made were bad necessarily. Everyone has their own way to play and create fighting games, and if you enjoy the complexity of these characters or you don't mind how a smaller roster on because you enjoy the crossover elements and those are enough for you, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I just wanted to share my thoughts about the subject, and I was curious what other people thought. So let me know in the comments below. Do you agree that fighting game rosters and tag fighters should stick to one franchise to have more deep cuts and variations? Or would you rather have a crossover with mainstays and one or two oddballs here and there? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you all next time.